Here we are at the end of the calendar cleanup process. Can you believe it? We've gone through, this is episode or part 7, I should say, of our calendar cleanup giveaway teaching on the Lunch with a Life Coach podcast. So we are today at Lunch with a Life Coach episode 14 already, holy moly, and part 7 of the calendar cleanup. We are wrapping things up this week with the emergency plan. So how do we respond when things go a little off the rails, even though we've had great planning, great planning process behind it? And how do we stay consistent? Because I have found over the years, people make really good time management plans, but they don't implement them, and they don't implement them consistently. So the best plan is only as good as its implementation, right? So I want you to think about in the past, when you have, or if you have made a time management plan and you tried to implement it, or you did implement it, what happened to sort of throw things off the rails? And a reminder that many behavior changes, we're talking about having to change our behavior, right? Many behavior change principles have in them built a relapse phase where we fall off and we have to get back on track. And I say that because we're so hard on ourselves when we don't stick to something that extra time of being down on ourselves actually inhibits us getting back on track. And it puts us further back from where we want to be. So I want you to be kind to yourself. That's the first piece, right? Some of you didn't think we were going to talk about that. Planning for emergencies, first, be kind to yourself. That said, so what do we do? I'm looking at page 19 and page 20 of the workbook if you're following along. What do we do? So a few things to consider. I want you to think first about what is the story you tell yourself around time? There's never enough time. I don't have enough time. I can't do it all. And I don't mean those aren't valid. I just want you to notice what you say to yourself around time. I need help. Nobody helps me. All of those things. What do you notice? What are those are some of the things that are stopping you from moving forward. So we've got to notice them, first of all. So what do you notice? What do you hear yourself say? And then how can we address that? For example, many folks say, I don't have time for that. And then I invite them to look at their screen time on the background that runs on the background of your phone. We spend a lot of time on social media. So that often is one area that we can go, okay, I need to make some changes here, right? And if social media, if scrolling, if watching funny videos is part of your self-care and is part of something that you just sort of need to unwind, great. Do you think there's some wiggle room if you spend 1 hour, let's say a day, on social media? Is there some wiggle room for me to take 15 minutes of that 1 hour? To take 15 minutes and move it towards the particular thing that you're working on? I'm not suggesting just give up social media. Like, we're looking at from a behavior change approach, right? And so just saying, take this thing and replace it with that fully, we know that that doesn't work, or it doesn't work long-term. So I want you to think about what are some of the things you're saying to yourself and address them. Are they true? Are they out of frustration? Does it mean you don't have the support that you need? What is the case? So looking at that can be useful, as I know it's not really an emergency, like a response kind of thing, an emergency response, but it is something to just be aware of. When an emergency comes up, what do you say? Oh my goodness, I don't have time for this. Right. Nobody has time for that, right? It's true. Nobody planned time for your kid to get sick. Okay, I just want you to think about, what do you say? What comes up for you? And then that can give us a clue of what we can do about it. Now, what is your emergency plan? And what I mean is, you've done your now, never, next, right? You've done all your scaling down of things. You have refined all of those things. You made a great time management plan. What have you set up for your emergency plan? So here's what I mean. I do my best to keep Sundays as a non-work day. Excuse me. Sunday, typically on the weekends, I would work in the morning, right? When my house is still quiet. And, Saturday mornings, I'm usually doing some marking, some social media planning, etc. It's nice and quiet, take a little bit extra time to cuddle with the dogs. Like, Yes, it's work, and it's a really nice time for me to sort of catch up and think about like, how am I best serving next week, etc. And then on Sundays, I do my best to actually do none of that, to none of the work, I mean. So, read for pleasure, walk longer with the dog, spend more time with family, etc. That said, my Sunday morning time is a flex time. So if something has happened during the week that I haven't gotten to all the things that I need, then I use a bit of Sunday morning time. That's my overflow space. I try to keep it closed and protected. And I know that sometimes, things go differently. There's more marketing than I thought, or something takes a little bit longer, or, it's awesome. There's maybe a new client coming on board that I've got to be onboarding and getting prepared for, right? Oftentimes I do find that people reach out sort of on the weekend. Saturday is the time they've given themselves a little bit of time to dig into their own things. And I do get messages, which is so interesting, right? Saturday afternoons, people looking for some life coaching advice or some personal training. And so, yeah, of course, that's awesome. So then Sunday morning, of course, then I'd be jumping into a little bit of connection. So you've got to make sure that you have a little bit of overflow time that you try to protect and that can open. Now, if you are always digging into that overflow time, something else has to give, and message me. We can talk specifically about that, right? Because then it's not actually an overflow time. It's time that you are using and needing for your time management or in your calendar. So we will think about that a little bit differently. We'll have to talk about that overflow and what's actually going on that you can't generally protect that time, right? So if you look at week by week, so in, let's say 4 weeks, in 1 month, your overflow time is your Sunday morning, and you've used Sunday morning once out of 4. That's a pretty, because you've had a sick kiddo or you yourself wasn't feeling well or whatever the case is, then, that's a pretty normal. We don't love the word normal, but that's a pretty usual type of response, right? That said, if you're finding every Sunday you have to work, as an example, then there's something missing. Okay. Here's the last thing that I'm going to say. This is also something that we must take notice of, and it has a very simple solution. How much time do you spend getting ready to get ready? You get to your desk and you think, where do I start now? Whoa, like I have piles. That is a sign of some time management skills and reorganization that needs done. And when you're working on something, when you're at your desk or wherever your workspace is, whatever the thing is, and you've got to leave that, whether it be for an emergency or whether you're just wrapping up your day, I need you to put a note to yourself or email yourself or whatever the case is. This is what's next. So that when you sit down, when you've got that great time management plan, this is one of the ways we keep the implementation. So it should say, when you sit down, next is to, I don't know, post that thing, work on this, call this person, whatever the thing is, right? So that you don't come back to your desk and go, well, now where do I start? We waste time trying to move through the clutter. And I will say that more largely too, not just in the time management component for work and for life, but when our space is really cluttered, our brain has a really hard time kind of weeding through that. Now, I know some people are comforted by clutter. And so it is something that, what works for you. Do you find, so here's the piece, do you find yourself getting ready to get ready? Like it takes you 30 minutes, an hour to actually figure out what to do next. That is a sign that something's not working. 5-10 minutes to go, okay, this is the thing, get ready, get your coffee, all the things, you're set up, you're ready to go. 5 to 10 minutes, we should be able to get back in the swing of things. Okay. So something again to watch for, not to judge yourself for, but just to watch for, because it's gathering those clues. And we've talked about this throughout. And if you follow me anywhere else, you've heard me talk about this, that we need to look at things with curiosity and not judgment. Judgment makes us feel so yucky and not motivated. And it's just not necessary. We're human. We're doing the best that we can. And we want to do better, right? So we want to say, okay, so what's the information that I'm getting here? The information is that I'm walking away from my desk. I'm leaving a mess. I'm coming back. It's taken me 45 minutes to figure out where to start. I could probably reclaim 35 minutes there if I left myself a note that said, next is X, Y, Z, right? Z, because I'm coming at you from Canada. So I want you just to think about that. What are some of the things, and reflect on what are some of the learnings you've had throughout and really digging into this process. And I know some of you are using this video series because you've joined me on the live workshops that I've had. And so you're using the video series here to be able to go back and say, hey, I would like to refresh my memory on this component or learn a little bit more about this. And so if that's something, however you've consumed this process, take a little bit of time to reflect on what you've learned. What's been most impactful? More importantly, what's going to help you move to action? Consistent, regular, long-term action is what we're looking for. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, email me, Deanna at deannalangfordcoaching.com. I would love to chat with you and, hear what you're working on, hear what your great takeaways are, find out what your challenges are, because as I mentioned, we're going to be shifting back into regularly scheduled programming on Lunch with a Life Coach podcast as this calendar cleanup process is finishing up with our part 7 today. And I'd love to, give you some more info that you may be able to make use of as we roll forward. So let me know, what else would you like to learn about? We'll see you soon.